Welcome to Season 5 of SEL in EDU. This is a space for educators who believe social emotional learning isn't an add-on. It's part of how we teach, lead, and show up every day. I'm Dr. Krista, and in each episode, we'll explore real stories, practical strategies, and the human side of learning that helps schools grow with intention. Today, I'm talking with Brenda Do, a copywriter turned children's book author. Here's the moment that started her book. Her young nephew dropped a container of leftovers, and the first thing he said was, "I'm so stupid." That broke her heart, and it became a picture book called It's Okay Not to Know. We talk mistakes, curiosity, and why knowing doesn't mean not capable. Thanks for tuning in to the conversation with Brenda. I'm super excited that I have a new friend, Brenda, here. She is an author of a book called It's Okay to Not Know. And she reached out to share this book, and I absolutely fell in love with it and said, can you please come on and talk to the SEL and EDU family about the book, how it came to be about, and your dreams of releasing this into the world. So Brenda, thank you for being here, for your time, and I'm excited about our conversation.
I super am too. So thanks for having me on your podcast.
Of course. So this book, It's Okay to Not Know, and I see it in the background. These are the times when I wish we were still doing the video and not the audio, because the book is so beautifully written and designed. And as a recovering perfectionist and as somebody who in my first years of teaching high school, I felt like I needed to have all the answers. And over time, and I think with some maturity, I've realized that it's okay to not know and to work on it together. So I'd love to hear what led you to create this book and to put this gift out into the world.
Okay. Well, so by trade, I am a copywriter. And copywriters are naturally curious people because we're always researching, looking for answers all the time. And we're always trying to understand humanity because the type of copywriting I do is sales. So we're always, as I put it, trying to guide your thought process. So I'm not manipulating. Trust me. I'm trying to be honest. And then so what happened was a few years ago, I was visiting my little nephew and niece at their mom and dad's house. And after dinner one night, my nephew was helping me put away the leftovers. So he had one of those little plastic containers and had the leftovers in it. And he was walking it over to the refrigerator. On his way, he accidentally dropped it. He was around 8 or 9 at the time. And when he dropped it, it made a hot mess because there was just food all over the floor, splattered on the counters. On the cabinets, just was a mess. And his reaction was instantly, "Man, I'm so stupid." And it just broke my heart that he judged himself for having a little oopsie, which is not a big deal because I drop things all the time. And then so I was thinking, where did that come from? Because his parents aren't like that. They wouldn't scold him. And so I couldn't figure it out. And then I just kept observing. And then, of course, the copywriter in me wants to figure out what makes people think the way they do. And then so I started to go down a rabbit hole researching work of Professor Dr. Carol Dweck. She coined the growth mindset and did a lot of work with children and understanding psychology and what makes them push themselves to be curious and think more and overcome challenges versus the ones who shrink when they face challenges. And then I started to look at other studies and I went, this is interesting. And then it made me start thinking about my background. Because you say you're a recovering perfectionist. So your readers can't see me, but I'm of Chinese origin. So my parents were immigrants. And it's like a cultural thing, sadly, where it's like you're supposed to come out of the womb being perfect and knowing everything. So the straight A's is standard issue. If you get anything less than that, then something's wrong with you. You're not trying too hard enough. You're too dumb, something. And you're instantly judged. And so we start judging ourselves and we think love is conditional. We think acceptance is conditional. Achievers. And it's because we don't love ourselves enough a lot of times. It's because we think that our worth depends on what someone else thinks of us. So I was starting to pull that in and I started to observe my nephew and my niece who are really little. And I'm thinking, okay, something's funky here that I don't quite understand, but I get that there's a pattern. And then so a couple of years later, I guess it was just in the back of my head somewhere. I just woke up one Sunday morning and I just thought, I have this thought in my head. I just have to get out. That's the writer in me. And then so I whipped out a draft of what I thought was kind of a poem because it was rhyming. And I whipped it out in like an hour. And then I decided, okay, whatever it is, it's out of my system. That's fine. So I went to go take a walk. I came back and they just kept nagging me again. So I decided to edit it just to play with it. It's one of those things I could not write. And then so I went ahead and edited it, looked at it, and I thought, you know what? This is something that has to get out into the world, and it became a passion project. So that's how I started writing it. And then I pitched the book out to some publishers and got it picked up and poof, there you go. So I learned the world of SEL throughout the process. Because to me at the time, I was thinking, because it's a picture book for little ones. So I likened it to Dr. Seuss meets Brene Brown. And then I learned SEL and I realized, oh no, that's it. And then I became really excited about trying to get this out into the schools and to the parents' hands, to office teams, whatever it is to help children and the adults reading it to the children. Remember not to judge themselves and to choose curiosity over self-judgment.
And I think what resonated with me is it did talk about growth mindset. And just like you said, it talked about being curious. And there's so many SEL skills wrapped up in here because we're also thinking about what are our strengths and being resilient, experiencing self-efficacy when we are successful after trying. And as a high school teacher, I admit that I didn't at the time think about using picture books or books that were more designed for K-2. But as I actually moved out of the classroom and became an instructional coach, I started seeing great value of going deep into some of these books with older students. The part that really stuck with me that I would like to pull a thread on is when you talk about mistakes as a gift. That would have been something that I would have pulled on for my high school students. Can you talk more about that part of the book?
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you that kind of surprised me actually when it came out of my brain about mistakes being a gift, because I think, quite honestly, a lot of times we write what we need ourselves, what we need to hear. And I'm not saying anything different than anyone you probably heard a million times. I'm just maybe rephrasing it so that it may land, because sometimes we just need to hear things different ways or many times before it finally sinks in. And for me, I finally realized, because I am a recovering perfectionist and control freak, and I love how you understand. And then so I was thinking to myself, okay, if I wasn't judging myself all the time, I wouldn't be so judgy to others as well. So, and here I am trying to think, I always have to look, because professional and this and that in a certain way, and not let my true personality shine, not let myself admit when I make mistakes or anything. Then I realized, wait a minute, when I do, I learn from it, and other people see me as human. And then so they're more willing to connect with me as well. We can support each other and all that kind of good stuff that comes with it. And then at the same time, because I'm not so judgy of others, when they make a mistake, then I can help them more open-heartedly than I used to in the past. And then so all of that, I realized, oh my gosh, it's actually nothing but good, because you're pushing against what we thought was a limit, and it's showing us how powerful we really are. And I think a lot of times it's a pattern that I think Dr. Dweck had uncovered in more of the fixed mindset kids or people. And then also it's what I've observed too, is that especially girls, it seems like we're taught to stay in our lane a lot of times. I remember when I was a kid and we were playing in the jungle gyms, and, the boys would do some crazy flips off of a jungle gym they're not supposed to do, but we do, because kids do that. And they land, they hurt themselves. And of course, the adults and everyone else would a lot of times say, oh, it's okay. You tried, dust yourself off, keep moving. When a girl did that, I noticed they go, you shouldn't have done that. You could have hurt yourself, da, da, da. And then all of a sudden we're being punished and we're being pulled back a little bit. Or when especially if we're taught like how I was, where you're supposed to already know how to do something really well. There's no learning curve really. It's pretty short little A to B. And then all of a sudden, if you can't figure something out, the instant label is, well, you're just not good at that. So you should stay doing just this. So then our world starts to shrink because we don't want to think people to think that we're not good enough, smart enough, fast enough, or anything enough. And then so we stay in our lane doing exactly what we know we can do really, really well. And so when we do that, we don't really see what our potential is. We grow up small and we cheat the world of who we truly are. And we cheat ourselves from experiencing the big life that all of us can have. And then so that's why I was thinking about the gift analogy, because when we push ourselves, when we stop judging, when we see that not knowing something doesn't mean you're not capable yet, when we learn all of that, it's a gift because we can keep getting bigger, bigger, bolder, more excited about life. And then we can share all of that with the world and help them see if they can do it, I can do it too. So that's how it came out.
That word bold is sticking with me. I was going through old pictures on my phone and like clearing out some social media stuff. And that was a word that I picked as my word of the year a couple of years ago. And I say that because I always wanted to be in a comfortable spot. So I went back to teach at the high school I graduated from. I was, interestingly though, and this is a little caveat, I was teaching in the room of a teacher who I didn't think liked me. And that was just my perception at the time. And I wasn't able to, quote, be in his class because I didn't fill out a paper well enough. But I ended up coming back and taking over his classroom and his courses that he taught, which is interesting. But then a principal asked me to apply for an instructional tech position. I'm like, no, I don't do technology. I love my classroom and I don't want to do something that I don't know what I'm doing. And so I wanted to stay in my lane. And he's like, but you can learn here. You can. And in doing that, I moved from classroom teacher to instructional tech to a curriculum coach to a leadership program in ASCD to meeting friends who encouraged me to get a doctorate to my own business. And it opened up doors that, having quotes, stayed in my lane, which I was very happy and I loved it. So I don't mean it as a bad thing. And I know you don't mean it necessarily like that as well. I'm curious, where in your life have you been bold and realized that sometimes those rumble strips were gifts for you to something bigger and more profound or impactful?
I would say it was definitely my career choice because I went to college thinking I was going to go into international trade, get that corporate job, wear the big power suits and have that corner office with the glass windows and some high rise in a big city. And yeah, that didn't work because I am a naturally very high energy kind of type A intense person. And it just set off all the bad things about me. It just made it even, a little more intense. And then so after I got out of the corporate world, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I realized that being an entrepreneur was the best thing for me. And then it takes a different personality, as you know, because you started your own business, to put yourself out there and say, okay, this is me. This is the value I bring. This is what I'm showing out to the world. And yes, I am charging you money for it because I realize that it is valuable to you and everyone else. And then so it's an equal exchange. My services for the pay. I had a sales background corporately before then, so I can sell all day long and cold call and have no problems because I was representing someone else. But then the moment I had to be bold and do it for myself, it was like, maybe I should give discounts. Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should do that. And, all of a sudden I started to go and to lower my value even more, right? And what I used to get so annoyed with, especially because I went into copywriting and that's a creative, the first thing people would say is, yeah, well, can you give me a discount on that? And I'm thinking, okay, wait a minute. I'm a professional offering you a service. When you go to your dentist and they say, hey, you need a root canal, do you say, okay, yeah, that's not a problem. Can I get 50% off? You don't ask someone to do that. If it was a doctor, or your accountant, you wouldn't say, okay, yeah, I know you're going to do my taxes, so this is your fee. Yeah, I'd like 30% off of that. You don't do that. But for some reason, people do for creatives a lot of times. And I was thinking to myself, in order to get the business, I need to start shortchanging myself. So of course, that affects how I show up in the world and how I start believing in my value. And then that energy is going to translate to how the client sees my value as well. It doesn't matter the quality of the work because the vibration is still there. And I really feel that it's very strong a lot of times. So being bold then had to be me over time realizing my worth, saying no to certain clients. So, and I'm going to cuss here, so you can always just bleep me, but Okay. I have a no assholes policy in life. So that means personally and professionally. And I would tell clients, and I was like, okay, I'm not trying to be insulting, but this is how it is. I bleed on the keyboard for you, and I only have a certain amount of time a day. So if I don't want to hug you or have a beer with you, I am not going to work for you. And so that is my very, very simple way of trying to calculate whether or not this is the person I want to work with, and then so that's how I start showing up, showing my value and being bold, is to learn to say no to certain people instead of always thinking I have to say yes.
Okay, so we need to take Bink and make an adult version of Bink 20 years from now and have the same messaging for us adults to read to ourselves before we go to bed at night.
Yes. Oh, I could totally do that.
I'm serious, because even as an entrepreneur, I know I've undersold myself, and sometimes people, and I'm getting better at this, because sometimes people are like, well, it didn't take you that long. Like, well, it didn't take me that long because I've developed a skill over the last 27 years that allows me to do it more smoothly. And I like how you said, like, you're given everything you have. And so, I show up for 6 hours, but you don't see the 4 days of work that I put in leading up to those 6 hours to make things go smoothly. And so coming back to the story, it starts with, it's okay not to know, and to hit kind of those rumble strips and see that there's good that comes out of that little struggle. And another piece of that book is Bink has a friend that comes in. And so Bink is the main character. And to me, Bink looks like a koala bear, but he's a monster, or they're a monster. And so stay with me, SEL and EDU. I am having a point here. So we can use this book to extend the stories for our older students and get them thinking just about their value, their worth, how they're being bold, how the rumble strips and mistakes of their past can be gifts moving forward. And you bring in other characters partway through the book too. So let's start off with Bink and describe to me how you conceptualized Bink and their characteristics.
Okay. Actually, if it's okay, I want to jump back to what you were saying earlier. I love that idea of helping the adults too, and using this not knowing for older kids. Because I've actually had parents say, I have a daughter who's graduating high school. She is so scared about college. She's not sure if she wants to do it. She's not sure what she wants to major in. And this book is perfect, because it gives you permission to not know, and it's especially hard when you're graduating. And sometimes you see, you got friends at school who know exactly what they wanted to be when they grew up since they were kindergarten. Great on them. But a lot of us don't. But we think we're supposed to, otherwise something's wrong with us. So I love that idea for older kids. And as far as how I created Bink in their world, so we say they, because since I grew up in the 70s, where none of the books at school or at the bookstore or the libraries had any characters that looked like me. All the kids were white. And I kept thinking subconsciously, if I'm not like them, if I don't try to act and look exactly like them, then I'm not good enough. And so didn't realize that was in my thought process until I started to go out into the world a little bit more. And then so I wanted to make sure that when I created the book and the characters, that every child, no matter what background they have, no matter what they physically look like, no matter how they feel about themselves, can relate to the characters of the book. So my illustrator, Casey Fritz, brilliant person, he created this world where I said, okay, since I want it to be as inclusive as possible, make it a bunch of like happy little monsters. That way anybody can relate to them. And then so he created Bink, and, I think he was inspired by a koala bear. So I can see him in there too. And it's a very happy thing. There's a mischievous side about Bink, because you can see it in the character in the front cover, because he's all, painting over like graffiti over the title. So I think that's pretty cool. I love that part, because it's the challenge your thought process, challenge sometimes what adults tell you, challenge your fears, because a fear is not a fact. It's just a feeling, and it's temporary. It can be. And then so when I created Bink too, I wanted to make sure, again, as inclusive as possible, that they have no gender. And that's why we say they. And also the character themselves, Bink is a sound that I think, as far as I know, that almost any child from any background, in any language can say. So it was easier to pronounce, because for me, English is a second language. So I wanted to make sure that any kid can pronounce this. because I have visions. Bingo's going to be international, like Hello Kitty, Snoopy, Bluey, you know, it's just spreading love and joy.
Yeah. I see that. I really do. And I can say I've known Bink since way back when this all comes up. And I love the thought process behind it, the intentionality in the work that I've done when I create pictures or have hired people to create some images. I've also wanted them to be, and I had them created so that they're colorless in a colorful world. And they're amorphous. So they look kind of like, I don't know, like jelly beans sort of, but they're all kind of similar. And people are like, why do you do that? And for the same reasons that you did, not because it was my experience, but because I learned that from people I cared about very much. And I heard their stories, and I see it in my own family as generations come through, and we expand our family even more. And hearing people's stories, I don't want somebody to not see themselves reflected in the books they're reading, in the world that they're seeing, in their schooling. And yeah, so that was a really powerful piece. And when you talk about language, this also brings up a skill around demonstrating cultural competency. And even just how the name Bink is something that's easy to pronounce for people. My husband is Italian, and English is a second language for him as well. And so when he tries to teach me some words, I'm like, my mouth, my muscles do not move that way.
Yes.
That's how we get our accents and different things like that. And it's, as much as I try, I'm like, I'm practicing. So I appreciate the fact that it is something that young kids can pronounce as well. One of the pieces that you mentioned, actually, I have to tell this story before I forget, but I need to go back to your no assholes thing because I love it. I was working in a school with middle school teachers. It was the beginning of a school year, and we were talking about SEL and just how these skills are healthy skills for life development for all of us. And I just got done working on some learning targets. And when I got to the 11th and 12th grade ones, I'm like, damn, I am still learning in these. Like, I'm not proficient in all of these, but I can aspire to it. And so we were talking about why SEL is important. And one of the groups was like, go ahead, say it. And the assistant principal's like, I'm going to say that. And then someone's like, the assistant principal said, it's so that kids don't become assholes. Yeah, just like be a kind, considerate human being. And Ink has a friend who comes into the story, and your story talks about how we can also extend the kindness of not knowing to other people. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. Underneath everything, I believe love is the answer for all of our world's ills. I know it sounds very hippy-dippy, airy-fairy, and it's true. It just is. I don't care how left and right brain you are, because the way you look at it, you can't hate if you're feeling love. You can't judge yourself when you love yourself enough to know your value. I love yourself enough to know that you can learn or that you're capable. And if there's something that you're really struggling with and it's just not your thing, it's okay. You can love yourself enough to give yourself permission to know it's not your thing. That doesn't mean you're less than. So love is everything. And so it starts with loving yourself, hence the lessons that Bink is learning for themselves. But at the same time, once you love yourself enough, then you feel confident to share that love with others. Because I've noticed that a lot of times there are some people who give themselves up for others. So they love others more than themselves. There's lots of that. And that's unfortunate. But at the same time, there's also a lot of people who are all about themselves, thinking there's not enough to help others. And so no, it's like the world works better when we're all connected and love each other. And so that's why I wanted to share that, to help kids also understand it's okay to help someone else. It's okay to admit, for example, when you are having a hard time, and then when someone else is, to help pick them up as well, because you feel better, they feel better, everyone rises together.
As you're talking, I'm imagining if I were still in the classroom, whatever grade I was teaching, I would use this book as a foundation for starting off a school year, because oftentimes, especially at the older grades, kids don't want to share. They don't want to speak. They're afraid of making a mistake and being wrong. And so they hold back. And they shortchange themselves the way you were talking about earlier, or they don't have confidence in their voice. And so they could have the most amazing ideas, but they don't put them out there. They withhold because they're not confident, or they're afraid of how their peers are going to respond. And I imagine this being a foundation, like a let's be like Bink. where it's okay to make a mistake. How can we pick somebody else up that's a gift that we're all learning together? Okay, so this person was a little off or kind of took it in a different direction. We know that maybe that's not our route. Where else can we go with this? And I'm also imagining even just like a big picture of Bink in the front of the room. I keep saying he because see, that's where my brain goes and I don't want it to be there. So they are at the front of the room as like a visual reminder that mistakes are okay here and that this is how we respond when we want to support each other through making mistakes so we can learn.
Exactly. And, especially with older kids or just any kids in general, school is horrible because you always think that is like the Petri dish of judgment right there. Because they're going, oh gosh, I have all the social pressure. What if they laugh at me? What if they this? What if whatever? And unfortunately, a lot of people, I wasn't taught this at home, is to have that self-confidence and your own beliefs, your own feelings, your own thoughts. And school's a horrible place to try to push yourself and put it out there because everyone's taught to conform. So I love your vision of thinking that, yes, if you feel safe, that you can express yourself and not be judged, and other people feel like they're safe to support someone else and just say, okay, I might not agree with you, but okay, I hear you. That's cool. And let's let it go. Not laugh at them or anything. How much better would our world be?
Even just that, learn to let it go. I was reading something the other day. It was actually on social media and it stuck with me that sometimes it is a gift to just let it go. Like you don't need to point out that somebody misspelled something all the time or that they mispronounced something or that like sometimes it's a time where it's like, oh, hey, by the way, like somebody's name or something that's really important. But if it's a little mistake, sometimes we don't always need to blow it up and make it a big deal. Like let it go and keep finding out more about that person and where they're going and what they're thinking.
Or take pause and ask, why does it matter? Why do you need to say something at this moment? I used to be that terrible person in the room who would correct everyone's grammar.
I've been there too. So I'm glad. Thank you for being honest about that because I know you mentioned about, and actually you had written in your work, and I'm looking over here so I get it correct. Curiosity begins where judgment ends. And I know that there are times in my life when I've been judgy or something has come into my brain and I'm like, oh, like I'm not proud of myself for that. So like catching it is a good thing, but then trying to fix it. And I mentioned that my husband is Italian and he also grew up in the city and had a very different schooling experience than I did. So he would ask me like, what do certain words mean? Like synonyms and things. And I'm like, didn't you have grammar at school, like vocabulary? I had to memorize 20 words a week. And then, sometimes he says ain't. And I'm like, I grew up with like ain't a word. Why am I doing this to him? He speaks 3 languages, is learning a 4th. He's incredibly intelligent. And just because he doesn't know a synonym or says ain't, like I understand what he's saying. Like I need to back off on my judginess and like be more, right? But it's a process. And I think acknowledging that's where we were and giving ourselves some grace to move beyond it is important.
Yeah. I love that grace. Because once we give ourselves grace, we can give others grace too. It is just the hardest with ourselves, I think.
Well, and that goes back full circle to the story you mentioned about your nephew, that his parents were not upset that he spilled something. Like kids have accidents. It's really not the end of the world. But it was his own internalized self-talk, the pressure he was putting on himself. And that happens for so many of our children for a variety of reasons, whether it's societal or what they're seeing on the media or what they're experiencing at school, where it's not necessarily the parents doing it or a culture, or sometimes it's just the world feels like it's pushing in.
Yeah. Because at the time he was in a school district this is sad, that kindergartners were going to therapy because they felt too much pressure. And it was just a very competitive school district. Or schools in general. And then so I was like, that is a horrible way to start off life because it just beats the curiosity out of you. And I think sometimes the messages that really well-meaning adults give, they don't realize how it can be misinterpreted by really young minds. Like, for example, if you put an A paper on the refrigerator door, that just signals to the child, oh, unless I have an A, then I'm not worth love. No one puts a C paper in there or a D even, and just says, hey, you did your best. This is what you did. That's cool. You did your best. Maybe next time we go half a grade up. Maybe next time we do this. Right. And then around the dinner table after school, when families are having dinner, they might ask, oh, well, what did you do today? They're looking for, what did you do well today? That's really the message. How did you do in sports? How did you do on your spelling paper, test? That kind of stuff. Instead of, what did you fail at today? Then no one asks that. And then they don't go, how did you push yourself out of your comfort zone? And what did you learn from it? Okay, so you learned this. Well, that's cool. Very few people, if anyone, talks that way, right? So that's where I think it's those subliminal messages as well from the world. And of course, we can go down the social media rabbit hole of perfectionism there, but I think all of that from our environment feeds into the self-judgment that kids grow up with.
Yeah. Well, and there's a good takeaway too, if any parents are listening, that we used to do highs and lows at dinner. Like, what was a high point of your day? What was a part that you didn't really love? And maybe there needs to be a part that's celebrated with, where did you fail? Where did you have some rumble blocks, and what did it teach you? And I feel like, and I'm imagining, there's a Pixar or a Disney movie with like inventors or something, and they have that conversation, and I can't remember the name of it. Meet the Robinsons, I think it was called.
Really?
And the grandfather was like, how did you fail today? And they celebrated it, and it was wonderful. But I forget about those things. I think it's all good to have reminders of celebrating those pieces, because one, it demonstrates courage. And, we talked about that before, and, you're stretching yourself. You're not letting yourself be shortchanged, and you're extending grace and empathy and compassion to other people around you. Like, there are just so many SEL skills all wrapped up in Bink's story and the way that you wrote it. So I'm so happy that you woke up one day and had this passion, this like piece that just needed to go out into the ether.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm so grateful for this ability to talk about it some more and share it with the world and your community, because it is so powerful when we all can get on and support each other in this way.
So where do you see Bink going next? I know we're still working on this part.
Yeah. Well, I would love, actually not would love, I am creating. So Bink is going to have a series because they have a lot of cool little lessons to teach kids. And also I can see Bink being a regular cartoon series, a lot like Bluey. Like, I love sitting down and just binge watching Bluey episodes because you just feel so crazy good. First, you wish you were parents like the Hellers, the Healers, and then you wish you had parents like the Healers a lot of times. So I just love that aspect as well. Plus, it's written so well that kids can interpret it a certain way, and it has just enough leniency. And then also that adults are enjoying it too, because they learn from the lessons as well. So I would love to be another cartoon series that kids and adults can enjoy together. And also, of course, have Bink merchandise. So that way people have their own little stuffed toys of Bink that they can have around the house, hug, remind, find comfort in, find a reminder in that they are more than enough. They are powerful, and big things can happen when they allow themselves to be curious.
My heart is like, yes, yes. And we're visual people. We like to hold on to things. When Bink comes out as a stuffy, you have to let me know, because I will be one of the first people in line. And it's just, I imagine this. And again, if you're listening, we're not just talking kindergarten to second grade. There are ways to be able to pull these threads for your older students as well. And to be honest, sometimes our kids, even the older ones, want to sit down and have a story, and they want to have a conversation. I used to work at a leadership conference and I worked with a group of the oldest students, like 15, 16. And at night, they would ask for a story. So before they'd go to bed, we'd all circle up, and I'd bring a couple different books, and they would just kind of lean on each other and listen. So I hope that people who are listening see the great value that can come from, one, a dream and a vision, passion to see it through, and a way to bring social emotional learning in for all of our students and for us adults as well. Thank you, Brenda, for bringing this to us. And if people want to get a hold of you or order the book or get access to your new toolkits that are up there for educators, what is the best way to get a hold of you?
To go to my website, BrendaDo.com, and Do is spelled D-O. And then so thanks for mentioning the toolkits as well, because I want to help teachers and counselors and parents as much as possible. So they're all free downloads because I want to make sure that the parents, counselors, teachers have all the tools that, available easily so they can start the conversations. Because sometimes you just don't know what little activity to do, especially for, if you got a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old at home, what do you do? Right.
Absolutely. Yes. Because they're hearing the same story, but they're going to need to individualize the questions and the conversations.
Exactly.
Brenda, thank you again so much for your time, your willingness to share. I am in love with this book. And I think we had talked before that some team members at Residence Ed are working on putting out read alouds and highlighting them with some questions. And you graciously allowed us to use your book in this as well. So we're hoping that we can help you get into as many people's hands as possible and in front of as many students as possible.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Really appreciate it. We just spread the love.
Yes. And please, as Bink goes on more adventures, please reach out. Let us know. We would love to hear how you're doing, how Bink is doing, and talk more SEL through literacy in the future.
I definitely will be in touch. And thanks again for having me on the show. This has been so fun. And also for what you do too. Because I love the enthusiasm that you have. Everyone can see it in your face. For those who can't see her right now, because we're on the all audio, you can hear it in your voice. You cannot fake enthusiasm when it comes from the heart. And you're very obviously working from your heart. So thank you.
Thank you for being part of the SEL in EDU family. As you move into the rest of your day, I invite you to notice one small way social emotional learning showed up in your thinking, your relationships, or your work. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep making space for meaningful, connected learning.